Hello and welcome to AHA-VTS Clipcast. My name is Alim H. Oh, by the way, I'm this handsome gentleman to the right. I'm sure there's a lot of network professionals who are viewing this Clipcast that have configured countless routers and switches, especially host names and passwords. And maybe there are some new network administrators who want to know, well, what are some of the basic housekeeping techniques that should be on every device, whether it be a router or a switch, as part of their basic configuration setup. Well, in this clipcast, that's exactly what we're going to do. Yeah, I know when we wipe out a router or switch clean or when we have a new install, and as part of the device setup, we have that auto install menu. But to me, that's just tedious and can be time consuming. And also, you don't get the hands on experience with the device's interfaces. So, this is what we're going to do in this clipcast. Well, we're going to configure the host name of our device and try to make it as robust as possible to be identified on the network. Then we want to configure the exact password or enable password in order to get into enable mode or privilege exec mode to configure our device. Then we're going to configure the secret password, which is similar to the exec password but with a key difference. Then we're going to go configure the clock and date on our device. Now we may have an NTP server to provide that in a production network, but in our homeland or on a test bed, we may want to do this ourselves. Next, we're going to configure the no IP domain lookup. Now, I wouldn't suggest this on a production network since you may have a DNS server, but again, in your test bed or in your home lab, you may want to turn this off. Next, we're going to configure login synchronous, and I'm sure when you see those status messages come across and then try to type a command and just interrupt your command, it could be kind of upsetting. So we're going to use the login synchronous command in order to alleviate some of that congestion. Next, we're going to configure the console password in order to access our device via a console connection. And last, we're going to configure the VTY or line password in order to access our device remotely. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is configure the host name on our device. And let me call out my term prompt. I just wiped out a router clean from previous configuration so we can have a fresh start. And as shown on the screen, we have the auto install menu. So I'm going to type in no, and I'm going to terminate. Yes, I'm going to terminate the auto install. Okay, so I'll hit the enter key a few times so I can finish the setup. Now the host name is the first thing that we should configure on devices. And configuring a host name allows us to identify our device on the network. And we should make the name as robust as possible or follow our company guidelines for naming our devices. Now on the screen on my term prompt, we are in user mode that is indicated by the greater than symbol. So when we configure the host name, we need to be in enable mode. Type in enable. And you notice that the prompt have changed from a greater than symbol to a pound symbol. Then we're going to config T of configuration terminal mode. And I'm going to use the keyword host followed by a question mark to see what context sensitive help has for us. So we're going to type in a name for our device and we should make it as robust as possible. In this case, I'll type in AHA hyphen, well that's an underscore, hyphen VTS underscore RTR1 for router 1, and I'm going to hit enter. Notice that the previous host name, which is router, is now changed to AHA-VTS underscore router 1. Next, we're going to configure the exact password or enable password, and this allows us to gain access to privilege mode of our device to perform configurations and changes. And I'm not too sure if you noticed, but I wasn't prompted for a password when I initially got into enable mode, and I'll prove that to you. I'm going to exit out back into user mode. I'm going to type enable, and you notice I wasn't prompted for a password before I got into enable mode. So let's put an enable password. Go to config T, and I'm going to type enable followed by password in order to issue a password. Now here in the context sensitive help, I can enter an unencrypted password or a hidden password, but for all intents and purposes of this basic Cisco housekeeping technique Clipcast, we're just going to enter a simple password. In this case, I'll just enter my name ALIM, and I'm going to hit enter. So the enable password is set, and I'm going to exit all the way back out to prove that this has taken effect. And as you recall, I was not prompted for password before, and let's see I am now. And yes, I am. And you gotta trust me on this one that I'm typing it in correctly, and hopefully you can hear the keystrokes. I am typing in ALIM, and I'm gonna hit enter, and voila, we are in enable mode. Next on our list is the secret password, and the secret password also allows us access to privilege mode. And the question you may be having is that, well, what's the difference between exec mode password and secret mode password? And to tell you the truth, I can't tell you because it's a secret. I guess that wasn't funny, huh? Okay. Well, anyway, the difference between the exec mode password and the secret password is that the secret password is encrypted by default as an MD5 hash, whereas the enable password is not encrypted. Also, the secret password supersedes the enable password when configured. So let's configure that. We're already in enable mode, and I'm going to type in config t. Config t. I'm going to type in enable, followed by the secret keyword. And we notice we have some similar context when we was configuring the enable password, but for all intents and purposes, we're just configuring the secret password. In this case, I'm going to make it different from the enable password. I'm going to type in Cisco, and I'm going to hit enter. And to prove that this has taken effect, I'm going to exit out of here. And you notice a status message interrupted my command, and we'll get to that later. We're back to user mode. I'm going to type enable, shorthand. Now I'm going to enter a password. Now, do we remember what was the enable password? I hope we do. Very simple. It's my name, Alim. So I'm going to type in ALIM. And notice that I cannot enter exec mode. Why? Because the secret password supersedes the exec mode password. So I'm going to type Alim again to make sure that I can't get in. And you can trust me on, you have to trust me on this one. I'm going to type in Cisco, CISCO, and poof, I am in exec mode. Now, I'm going to do a show run to prove that the secret password is in fact encrypted. We're going to do the show run configurations, and shown in the middle of the screen, of course, the enable secret password is secret 5, and you notice those characters, the text to the right of the number 5, that is the hash in MD5. And underneath there is the enable password in clear text as Alim. Next on the Cisco Housekeeping Techniques, we have the clock and the date. And I'm a bit skeptical to define this as a housekeeping technique, since in the production networks, you have a time source or server to deliver time to those devices. But since in our home labs and our test beds, you may want to configure the time and date and you may not have a time source, we might as well do one for our own edification purposes. Now, configuring the time and date, you don't go into config T in order to do this, and this is kind of weird because you do this from privileged exec mode. So I'm going to type in clock, followed by the keyword set. And we're going to set the time as 24-hour intervals. So I'm looking at my clock here. It is 3 p.m. So that will be 1500 hours. And then the day of the month, probably by the time you view this, will be the 24th of December. And I want to wish everyone a happy holidays and joyous new year. And then for the year as 2010. And we're done. So let's see if that clock has been set. I'm gonna do a show clock, and sure enough, we have it as 3 p.m. UCT Friday, December 24th, 2010. Let me do a show run. So you notice that there is no time set in our running configurations as yet. So I'll write mem in order to save the configurations. The time should appear as part of the running configurations. So once that is complete, I'm going to do a show run now. And lo and behold, at the top of the screen, NVRAM configuration last updated at 1500 hours UCT Friday, December 24th, 2010. Next on our list is the no IP domain lookup command. And if you have a home lab or a test bed in your work environment, this command can be helpful to eliminate some downtime while your device systematically searches for a resolution to an incorrect command or name you inputted onto your device. This can get really annoying while you're on the precipice of solving that problem. So let me show you what happens when you type an incorrect command onto your device. For example, I'm just typing some gibberish. And you notice that the device is trying to search the universal broadcast address to a domain server to resolve this name. And believe me, this is kind of fast compared to other devices that will take up to 3 minutes to try to resolve a name that it cannot resolve. And again, this could get annoying when you're on that precipice, on that apex of solving that problem. So In order to alleviate this type of congestion, we will configure the no IP domain lookup command. So again, I'm already in privileged exec mode. I'm going to type config t, and then I'm going to type no IP domain lookup, and I'm going to hit enter. Now that would turn off the name resolution function of the router if you type incorrect command in. So Control Z back out, and again, that status message is interfering with my command line. Now I'm going to type some gibberish again, and you notice it resolved it a lot quicker than it did before. Before when I did it, notice it took about, I don't know, maybe about a second and a half to try to resolve it quickly. Now it took less than a half a second. So that command is very useful when you're trying to solve a problem and you're on the precipice of solving it. Next, we have the login synchronous command. And have you ever begun typing configurations in your device only to get interrupted by a status message that prohibits you from finishing your entry correctly? Believe me, I've been there, and it's just as annoying as a domain IP lookup. And if you noticed previously when I was typing in and through this K.L.I.P.cast, some of those console messages did come and interrupt me, and you saw how I got pretty annoyed with that. So let's make our lives a bit easier by entering a simple command that will allow us to continue typing without the status messages interfering with our syntax. So this would be your device prior to, let me go into config T mode real quick here. So I'm going to exit back out, and this is basically what your device will be. You see the status message, and you notice the cursor at the end of the status message as opposed to bringing you to the next line for you to input your command. This is what life is before the login synchronous command. So I'm going to go into config T, and on the line console 0, I am going to input login synchronous, and I'm going to hit enter. And now life is a little bit more easier. I'm going to do a Control Z to get back into privileged exec mode and do a little typing. And you notice now, once I type in a login synchronous command, that when the status messages came, I can continue typing where I left off at my prompt. And believe me, this is a wonderful command to have in any environment because you do not lose the syntax for which you was typing in prior by these status messages. Next on our Cisco Housekeeping Technique list, and of course you can't see it because of my Teraterm prompt, it is the console password. And the console password is used to secure the console interface of your router or switch to only authorized users. So let's configure a simple console password. We're going to go, I'm already in enable mode. We're going to go into config T, and then I'm going to type in line con 0. The first thing I'm going to do is type in password, followed by a generic password. In this case, I will type in New York, if I can spell it correctly, New York. Hit enter, and then I'm going to issue the login command in order to prompt us for password once we log into the console connection. To prove that this is taking effect, I'm going to exit all the way back out to user mode, hit enter, and notice it's asking me for a password. Now this password is not the secret password or the enable password. This is the console password. And if you remember quickly what that password was, that was New York, and you got to trust me on this one. I'm typing it in, NEWYORK as one word. And here I am at user mode. In order to get into enable mode, I'll have to type in the secret password, which is, I can't remember now, Cisco, I believe. And we're back. And last on the Cisco Housekeeping Techniques is the VTY line password. Now the VTY or virtual teletype password is used to secure the incoming connection to your router or switch via telnet or SSH or some other method. And I had to pause the recording for a second to configure an interface on this router to show this. So what I'm going to do first is call up another Teraterm window, and I'm going to try to log in via telnet, and we will get something that says password required but not set because we haven't set one yet. So let's configure that password. I'm already in enable mode. Go to config T, type in line VTY from 0 to 5. In this case, I think this router has 15 VTY connections. I'm going to type in log in first. Oops, excuse me. All right, until a password is set. Okay. I typed in login, and then I'm going to type in password. And in this case, since I used New York already, let's use San Fran for argument's sake. And if I can spell it correctly again, type in San Fran as the password. So the VTY line is set, and let me go back to my term to validate that we can actually log in. Okay, I'm going to do a telnet session. Now it's asking me for a password, so I will type in San Fran, and you have to believe I'm typing in the right password. And here we are in user exec mode using the VTY line password. Now to verify these passwords and what we configured here in this Clipcast, let's go to show running configurations and see what we have here. As you can see, we have the enable password, which is that hash and all of those characters. We have an enable password, which is Alim. We have the host name as AHA-VTS underscore RTR. We have the IP domain lookup. And let's scroll down. You'll see that the line con has a password of New York, and the login synchronous, and the login keyword. And under the line VTY 0 to 5 lines, we have the password as San Fran and login as we entered into this device. So let's recap this clipcast of Cisco Housekeeping Techniques. First, we configured a host name to make our device identifiable on the network. We configured an exec password in order to get to privileged exec mode. We configured a secret password that supersedes the exec password. We configured the clock and date on our devices in the event we don't have an NTP server. We configured no IP domain lookup in the event we don't have a DNS server on our network. We also configured login synchronous to help us with those status messages. And we also secured our console port with a console password, as well as our VTY or line connections with their own password. I hope this clipcast on Cisco Housekeeping Techniques was informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.